This is Stephanie Roothouse, the Director of Customer Marketing at Replicon. I'm joined by my colleague Scott Bales, the Director of Solutions Engineering. And on behalf of Replicon, we'd both like to thank you so much for being a Replicon customer and for taking the time to join the webinar today, which is Running a Tight Ship with Effective Resource Management. So just a little bit of housekeeping. You are on mute, and that's going to be the case for the duration of the presentation. We will have a Q&A at the end, and feel free to submit any questions you may have as they come up, as you think of them, and through the Q&A text box on the right-hand side of your screen. So let's dive right in to set the context for the conversation. Let's do a poll question. How do you track employee utilization today? So you have 5 options here. Are you using Replicon Web Resource? Do you have a homegrown system, using Excel? Do you have a package system, or the Honor system? So please vote once you make your decision. So Scott, given your tenure here at Replicon, you've worked with a lot of customers. What is your prediction in terms of results here?
I think what we're going to see, just based on history, is a lot of Excel and potentially Honor system, because it is a popular requirement when we're talking to customers, and the majority of them are running using Excel to capture this, or they're trusting their employees and managers to make sure that things are in place to accommodate that. And it looks like Excel has won out. Looks like the Excel has won out, so not surprised by this. This is what we're seeing in the industry, and it looks like we actually have some customers that are using our existing resource module on the line with us. The next thing I really want to step into is the product that is going to kind of move our resourcing from the past and customers that didn't have resourcing from the past into the future. And to do that, I'm going to use and leverage a company story. E.S. Williams Limited is a 200 associate organization. They're servicing small, medium business, providing outsourced IT services, break-fix stuff, management consulting type situations, printer support, but they've got all of these field associates that are out and remote, and they're not located geographically in one specific location. That can make it a challenge. Understanding what people are working on, they're not actually at a desk all the time, so you can't see specifically, who's around and who's available. The other thing that we want to touch on is it's an evolving process for them. They are really trying to figure out the best way to do this. They may have Excel spreadsheets in the past in some groups. Other people are using Microsoft projects. But what they really want to do is take the next step and standardize, put all of that information in one system, because they're already using Replicon today. So this is the solution that we would take the time to show them. And what we're going to do is, once my screen is shared, we're going to be able to see really the root of that reality, and that's the resourcing calendar, which you see up here now. So this resourcing calendar, we're going to come back to this a couple of times over the course of the half hour, is really our dashboard, if you will. It shows us all the users in the organization down the left-hand side. It's showing us dates across the top, in this case months, but we can look at that more granularly, looking at a weekly level. It tells us visually how many people are available, because white space here is availability. Richard, none. User like Paula, lots of availability. And then the green shows us time off. The blue and light blue show us different types of projects within the system, tentative versus in flight. And we'll take a look at how we get this data into the system, but I want to really just cover off this view before we do so. So really, the first component of resource management is understanding how your resources are utilized. Make sure, A, that everybody's being utilized as effectively as possible, and B, when are they going to be free so I can take on new projects? And that's what this view presents as well. It presents an infinite view into the future as far out as you would like to start scheduling resources. So you can start to see when they become available so that when you take on new business, you can give customers more accurate timelines. Okay. Another important piece that we're seeing from this visualization is over-allocated users. The pink tagging there shows us not only users that are fully allocated, but over-allocated, because obviously burnout is a concern. Maybe you can take some of their tasks and move them over to other projects if you need to. You can easily see that just by mousing over the individual's cell and then drilling down into the project. Okay. Now this view represents for us, from a utilization perspective, a cumulative row. And we're in the system right now as a resource manager or a supervisor. So what I'm seeing here is not as an end user, it's somebody who manages these employees within the organization. Okay. From this view, I can see a cumulative row like I'm seeing here, or I can choose to show projects by clicking under Christina Jacob and see what makes up the utilization for her over time. Now, what we should take a look at is what drives this data. And before we do that, I'll point out that graphically is how we're seeing this data represented. If we are more numbers-based, that view can be changed to hours or percentage. And the hours view is probably something closer to what you're doing in Excel today. Now, we've looked at the end result. We want to understand what drives this, and what really drives this information is a couple of things. It's allocating users to projects. Before that, even though, we're going to be allocating placeholders, and placeholders are really users within projects that we know the role, we just don't know who the specific user is going to be. So imagine a sales rep at E.S. Williams has gone out, they've sold some services to one of their clients. That client needs a Windows 8 deploy, pushing out Windows 8 across all their machines in the organization. That sales rep is going to come back to the office and by some means, whether it's an import of project into our tool, whether it's manually entering it just like I'm about to do, or whether it's a synchronization with some other project management tool, the system will have the Windows 8 deploy project, and I'm going to associate it with a client here. I'm going to put it in a program, and program is just another way to roll up projects, the same way they could roll up to a client. And as soon as I click Add Project, that's now live in the system. There's no data yet to graph, but that'll change, you see, as we start adding resources. The next thing I need to do is tell somebody who's in charge of those resources what kind of people I need for this project. So now as a PM, the sales rep has come to me and said, we need a Windows 8 deploy for Joan of Arc Incorporated. Staff it out and let me know, when is it going to be, what's the timeline, how long is it going to take. So here's the project. We could put a complex task structure in if we wanted to, not necessary for this resourcing conversation. So I'm going to go to the Team tab. The Team tab is where I define who and how much users are working on this project. So I can add specific users or placeholders. As a PM, I'm going to start by adding a specific user, because I know one of the users I'm in control of is myself. So I'm going to add myself to this project. I don't have a lot of time available, so I'm going to just add me to the team. You can see there I am. I'm also going to add several placeholders. So placeholders are simply roles within your organization that users would fall into. You define these roles, and you can add one or more of these roles to the specific project just by choosing and indicating, clicking. Now I've got 2 developers. I'm also going to add a project manager to this project as well. Okay. Now here we've indicated the types of resources and the individual users that we need. For all intents and purposes, nothing's changed here. We haven't indicated any allocations for these individuals yet. Here's where the big change happens from a Replicon project perspective, is the concept of allocation. Okay. Those of you that are using Web Resource, this isn't going to be foreign to you because you have this capability there. But here we've made it much more intuitive from a user interface perspective. So now at the bottom, I can see, again, visually, how Scott is allocated to other projects in the organization, and even the time off in the green. Okay. The ability to simply add an allocation to a user is very easy. I just click anywhere in their row. I choose a date range. In this case, I'm going to extend this out to the end of April at 2 hours a day, working every day of the week, and add that allocation. So it now shows up as a blue allocation so that I can tell the difference between this project and other projects. This is, remember, just a project view. So we'll go back to resources and see how this plays out, but we're just looking at a project view right now as the project lead. Now I need a way to communicate to the resource manager how much project manager developer time I need from these individuals. So the PM on this project, I only need for 2 hours a day, and I only need that resource to check in on Mondays, let's say Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And that's going to play out till the end of April as well. And I'm going to add the allocation. Okay. So now the allocation exists for that placeholder. I could do the same for this other developer, and sorry, this exists for the project manager. And for developers, I'm going to go in. Before I do that, I'm going to indicate an allocation. So I want spending half his time on this project right till the end of April, again. And then we could potentially ramp him off the project or reduce or increase their allocation, and I didn't put the right date in, so bear with me. So allocations aren't difficult to change within the system. It's very easy for us to go in and do that, as you just saw. Now I've got 2 placeholders. I've indicated how much of their time I need, but maybe I don't have authority to allocate those resources from a permissions perspective within the system. So at some point, the person who is in charge of developers or project managers is going to leave the system, log in, and they're going to go to the Resources tab. Okay, so if I access the system now as let's say the development lead, I'm going to go to the Resources tab, and I can see on this list all the users in the system, but I can also filter that down. I only want to see the implementation team and how they're allocated or how they're being utilized. It's pre-filtered the list to show me their usage. Okay, so these filters at the top exist for you to see a subset of your users. Obviously, looking at 100 users at once is not going to add a whole lot of value. And it's going to be a lot of noise there. So you filter down to what you want to see in this calendar, and that's all done with the filtering at the top. Now, as the development manager, I check on my guys. I understand who's over and under allocated. If I want to see that visually really quickly, I can just see that and choose none. It looks like Alex is doing absolutely nothing. Why has he not had more projects allocated? And that might be a concern for me. Let's see if I can find any, if we have any openings for him, right? So I go to Placeholder Resources right here. Now, what I'm looking at is all the requests for resources from PMs in the organization. Right now, it's showing me all the project managers, and at the bottom, you can see that deploy. I can see that PM resource. I'm not in charge of PMs. I have no concern for them. I don't want to look at what they need because I can't help. But I'm in charge of all the development resources. So now I filter this list. I can see all of the requests from product managers or project managers looking for specific resources of a certain role. Here's that project down at the bottom again, the Windows 8 deploy. Looks like the PM thinks he needs another developer but hasn't allocated time, so I'm just going to wait for him to review that. But he does need one developer almost full-time, it looks like, from March through to April. At this point, I still have no visibility into who it would be, and I don't want to have to switch between my one menu to find the person and then go back to my placeholder menu to allocate them. So what you can do very easily in Replicon is click the placeholder, and it does that for you. It puts the placeholder up at the top, and you can scroll through the list, showing you all your users in order of availability. Okay, so you'll notice down here, Michael is only 50% available to take on that task, but at the top, I've got resources that are openly available to start working on this. Now, again, this is showing me everybody because there's always exceptions to the rule. You may have to go outside your team to staff something, but I know that I've got resources because I saw that are available to take this on. So I'm going to go to Implementation just to filter out my group, and I can see both Alan, Matt, Alex. There's Alex that has availability. There's some conflict, though, because he is allocated to something else, a little bit. So I'm going to choose Alan. I'm going to replace the placeholder with him. And now what we've done is we very easily communicated from product or project manager through to a resource manager what they need, how much they need, and the resource manager has been able to staff that position very quickly based on the availability of the users within the resource calendar. Okay, if I go back now to my actual resources, I find the user that I assigned this to. It wasn't Alex. Sort by. Move this filter. And I look for that specific project, Windows 8 deploy. It shows me all the named users that are assigned. There's Alan McDonald. He's the user that we replaced with the placeholder there. Okay. Now, all of this data is great. It lets you see all of the things I've indicated indefinitely into the future, helping you understand utilization. All of this data is also doing something else. It's giving you user-level estimates over time. And that's valuable because if I go back to projects and drill down now into the project, what you're going to see is now I can see estimates of hours over, in this case, weeks. I can look at this monthly, and I can understand how my hours are going to ramp up for this project. I can compare costs on this project and see how my costs are going to fluctuate over time. And if I had defined billing rates in this solution, we could also see and forecast our revenue with regard to this project. Okay. Now, these visual dashboards and representations are really leveraging all of the data from that resourcing calendar that we were looking at, but all of that data is also available from reporting. So if I go to reporting, and we'll take a look at a couple of reports within the system. One, we'll take a look at the resource utilization, understanding how resources are utilized across departments in the organization. So if I bring up this report and go ahead and run it, what we're going to be presented with is actuals, again, versus our estimates or our forecasts, which is what we're doing in that calendar. We're defining forecast hours, all right? Those forecast hours can be compared to the actual hours that are captured on the timesheet for users. So here's an example of Richard. In 2012, month after month, his actual available hours and the actual hours that he worked. So obviously there was an issue here for Richard in late 2012, but we've got some real data here in 2013 showing us his utilization rate calculation on the end. What percentage of the available hours did he actually enter time? And that's a great calculation that is available within the system. There's another resource management report that I want to take a look at, and that is the, let's go to the resource capacity planning report. When I open up this report, I've taken a subset of data. I'm just looking at a single quarter now. So here I'm seeing 2014, each department listed, and now I'm rolled up to the department level. So I can see the available hours for the department, the actual hours on timesheets for the department in January. So you can now monitor departmental performance as well as users if you need to. Okay. Reporting isn't just tied to utilization. We can go down to the project level and look at the project team members, actual versus estimated hours, and we can see that over time. We're not locked. Those of you that are familiar with the product know that we have estimates at the task level today, but we don't have estimates at the user task level, and you may be getting around that by creating tasks for every individual user, which can be tedious. But now, with allocation, you'll see here that the Advantage Technologies automated reporting and dashboards report shows us month over month the actual and estimated hours, actual and estimated costs, and billing amounts for each user in the system. Okay, looking at specifically at a user like Robert, California, who we have actual hours for but no estimated hours. So that might draw our attention and trying to understand why that was. We can see the costs and estimated costs associated with this as well. So we always have this variance that we can report on between what we thought was happening and what actually played out. Now, I should also point out one last thing is that All of this data is contributing to the project trending. We could also roll all of that information up to the client, Joan of Arc Inc., for example. Now we're seeing all of Joan of Arc's projects, actuals versus estimated, represented here, the number of resources that are allocated to Joan of Arc's projects. And the other way we could slice this data is through programs. Programs is just, again, a grouping of projects, all with a common theme, if you will, with the ability to drill down from here into the project and, of course, into individual resources. But I wanted to stop there because I'm sure there's lots of questions. We've seen a lot. And before we get to those questions, what I really want to talk through is what we've seen today versus what you're running from a product perspective. So obviously today we've got a combination on this call. We've got time bill customers, time cost customers, and we also have web resource customers on the call. So the fact of the matter is that what we're looking at is the latest, and there is going to be a migration that occurs between the platform that you're on today and the latest platform that represents all of this resourcing capability and functionality that we're looking at. So I'm not quite seeing the slides yet. They're just taking a second to come up here, so bear with me. But ultimately, what we've been in today is the PSM suite. So PSM is just Professional Services Management. Okay, both our PSM and our PPM suite are really time cost and time bill plus. Okay, those instances both have resourcing capabilities over and above the core functionality that you're working with today. So as you can see on the slide, if you're using time bill today, we have a time bill version of that in the latest platform. If you want the resourcing capabilities that we've seen, you would need to move to PSM. Likewise, if you're running time costs, you can come straight across and get the platform benefits, but to get the resource management that we've talked about, that's a move to the PPM solution. Okay. Now the other group of customers are customers that potentially have web resource, and they're using that state in conjunction with either time bill or time cost. Obviously, that data can come over as well, and it's really just the path for you would be to go directly to the Replicon PSM or PPM product so that you don't lose any of that resourcing functionality that you have today. Okay. And considerations will be made from a cost perspective. Understand that you already have all of that as you move over for those web resource customers. Okay. So with that, I think...
And would like to thank you for your time today. If you would like to see resource management in action with your own user or project data or a subset thereof, we can easily do that for you, and we would recommend that you work directly through your account manager on that one. If you have any questions about who your account manager is, I'm happy to respond back to that. You have my email address from the emails. So with that, we'll sign off, and thank you again.